What up, gamers? Welcome back to Gamers Bay, and today we're going to take a look at Pit Fighter. This is a classic arcade fighting game published back in 1990 by Atari in the US and later by Konami for the Japanese port. Believe it or not, this monstrosity of a fighting game was once a really popular game among arcade goers of long ago. In fact, I remember waiting in line to play this game upon its initial release, only to walk away scratching my head as to why. The game used real human props in the form of digitized live actors using a blue screen recording process. The characters' in-game movements were actual replays of the human movements previously recorded. Yes, these were real human actors that were used in this game. There were 3 playable characters in the game, including Kato, a martial arts black belt, Tai, a kickboxing champion, and Buzz, an ex-pro wrestler. The character movements were really stiff and choppy at best. In fact, the game's characters more closely resembled stick figures than real-life fighters, despite being produced with those real human props. With limited fighting maneuvers, the game just wasn't fun. Besides the various foreign objects that could be used as weapons within the game, the characters themselves had very limited mobility and a short set of fighting maneuvers to attack their enemies with. There were power pills that it picked up, gave your player a temporary boost. There were also some in-game props that you could throw at your enemies, like motorcycles, crates, barrels, knives, so forth. Each match in the game featured a crowded setting where the crowd itself would at times interfere with the fight if you got too close, pushing you back into the fighting arena in the process. If you got too close to the crowd itself, they would just knock you back into your opponent. The game was heavily ported across various consoles later on, and was included as a title in Midway's Arcade Treasures 2 back in, I believe, 2004, which was released for the original Xbox, PS2, GameCube, and a number of handheld consoles, which I'll get into in just a second here. Surprisingly, this game actually received rave reviews from many critics in the gaming industry during the time. Personally, I didn't care for the game. It felt it lacked substance, as there really wasn't much to the gameplay itself, and the lack of maneuverability with players was a real turnoff. Either way, the game was nothing to write home about. Nonetheless, the game was considered an innovative feat for the time, and only the second game ever to use the blue screen recording process with digitized characters. I think people were awed by the concept. Too bad the game lacked any real depth and playability though. The game was later followed up with the release of Atari's Guardians of the Hood in 1992. Which was basically just an updated port of the original Pit Fighter. It featured the same style of digitized graphics, but it wasn't as widely received by arcade goers, and it never found its way to the home gaming console arena. Pit Fighter itself was ported to a number of home consoles, including the SNES, Genesis, Mega Drive, and I actually had a Commodore port of the game I played on the Commodore Amiga, I believe was back in 1992. Which was the only port I played that actually looked identical to the original arcade port. The Genesis version was awful, the graphics were just terrible, while the SNES version looked a little bit better, although the background graphics looked really, really distorted. There were also several handheld versions. The Atari Lynx version actually wasn't bad, but I didn't care for the Game Boy or Tiger Electronics handheld versions. The problem often encountered with the Lynx version is that you had to stare directly at the screen and not from an angle, otherwise the game would fade away completely. The Lynx used an early form of LCD technology, and anyone who owned an old school LCD TV knows you had to look straight at the screen head on, and standing from an angle would cause the same fading effect you would see with the Lynx. So yeah, this was a really innovative game for the time. You know, it was only the second game ever to use real human props within the game, but there was no substance to this game. You know, I mean, it was like you had the same 2 or 3 moves. It was a 2-button game in the arcade. You could pick up sticks and beat your characters. You could throw your characters. You could pick up in-game props and so forth. But for the most part, I have to admit I was really bored to death with this game. I did have it on the Commodore Amiga. I did play it on there a little bit. It just wasn't fun. When this first came out in the arcades, I think I stood in line for like 20 minutes to even get a first crack at this game. And man, I just walked away really disappointed. It was just beyond boring. But it was the concept. It was the concept, and that's why the critics gave it so many great rave reviews at the time. You know, they looked at this game, they thought, wow, this is really cool. These are real human actors in a video game, you know. And this is, you know, something, blue screen effects, recording process was something that was used in, you know, the Hollywood scene, a lot of Hollywood movies, you know, back even in the 1940s, 1950s. You know, and here, now we're using it to make video games, and, you know, this is back at a time when, you know, vector graphics were still, you know, a thing, and, you know, for the most part, home gaming consoles actually didn't have that great of graphics. The original NES wasn't that great. The Sega Master System didn't exactly have stellar graphics either, and this was like state-of-the-art. This was a state-of-the-art game for the time. I mean, if you walked into an arcade, you saw this game, you look at the graphics, go, wow, this is amazing compared to, you know, these stick figure type games you were playing on the Atari 2600 or 7800, or your really blotchy 8-bit graphics on your NES console. And, you know, I kind of felt like the characters in this game were really stiff. They were really much like stick figures. You look at if you look at the movements, you can see what I'm talking about. Like when you jump, you know, there's no formability in it. It's really cut and dry. It's just, look, you got a punch and a kick, a punch and a kick, a punch and a kick. It's the same movements over and over, and there's no real substance. Even the barrels, I noticed the in-game items that you know, the in-game props that you throw, that you attack your characters with, they hardly even look like a chair or a barrel or a knife. It looks like just a blotch in the screen. Characters in the background, you can see they're rooting. Yeah, if you get too close to the characters, they'll knock you back in. But yeah, they just look like, you know, they don't really look realistic, you know. But back at the time, yeah, people were awed by this. They're like, oh wow, this is so cool, this is so great, this is such an amazing feat for the video game, for the gaming industry. And you know, even at the time, I think I was like 10 years old or something when this game came out. I mean, I really wasn't, I wasn't excited about it. You know, I looked at it, I said, this is not Afterburner, you know, this is not Turbo Outrun, you know, this game is not original. At the time, you know, Street Fighter 2 had just hit the scene, and, you know, I thought that was really innovative. You know, Street Fighter 2, you know, you had really fluid maneuverability in the games. You know, you had special attacks and so forth. You also had decent graphics, and that's something this game really lacked. Yeah, great, you know, real human actors, but they just look like blobs, stick figures on the screen. Now this power pill, you pick up this power, that pea, that green pea that the guy just picked up, those give you a temporary boost in strength. And you can see he's like got this green glowing effect, you know, and you really can't do much damage to them when they're in that state. You kind of have to let it wear off. They can really mess you up. Their hits are like double the strength as what a normal hit is. Nonetheless, this is definitely a part of our gaming heritage. You know, this is really what helped to define the early days of fighting games. You know, definitely wasn't Street Fighter, but if you look at the original Street Fighter game, it was worse than this. It was really, really bad. In fact, the original Street Fighter was just like god-awful. I mean, you could hardly control the character. You basically had a punch and a kick, and it was real choppy. You were like flying around on the screen. You had pretty decent control over your character in this game as far as your movability goes, but you know, like if you're moving up and down, you know, left to right, so forth, you could control that very well. But it was kind of like once you get next to your opponents, you've only got, you know, 1 to 3 or 4, you know, actual maneuvers that you can even pull off. You know, look, you got these throwing stars in here and stuff like that. It just looks like a cup holder. You know, it's not, You know, it really wasn't innovative by today's standards. You look at things at games like the new Killer Instinct, and it's just like, wow, look how far we've come. You know, here this guy standing on a forklift is supposed to look so incredible and amazing. Now they're in a subway, you know. But yeah, I was bored. I was bored to tears with this game, and you know, I was kind of surprised. My friends at the time were really awed by this too. Like the critics were, they're like, oh wow, this is so cool. You know, I had friends that would, you know, go to the arcades and play this game for like an hour at a time, and I just couldn't figure out why. You know, it's just, it's so repetitive. You're literally doing the same crap over and over and over again. But like I said, nonetheless, it's definitely a part of our gaming heritage, and it did help to define what would later become the modern day fighting game that we see today. So, very interesting. I'm actually running this in MAME. This is the original arcade ROM. This is version 9. You can see that knife. It just doesn't even look real. The barrels are like, just look like pieces of plastic, like gray plastic that he's throwing. Anyways, many thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you get a chance, definitely hit that like button and subscribe to stay up to date with our future videos. And check out Gamers Bay Community on Google+, where you can connect with thousands of other gamers online. And if you have a gaming channel, check out the Gamers Video Archive. There's a link from within the About section of Gamers Bay Community. You can post your videos there, your gaming related videos, and we actually do promote YouTube and Twitch streamers from our community. We have a Pinterest board for the Gamers Video Archive. We also have a Twitter account for both Gamers Bay and for the Gamers Video Archive. And we do actively promote high quality, engaging videos or anything that just looks really interesting. You can also make requests to Gamers Video Archive brand page to feature your content among our social profiles, and often we will do it. We can't get to everybody, but we do our best to give everybody, you know, a fair shake at getting visibility for their work. Because I know it's a lot of work, you know. Like I did research on this game. I was looking up graphics. I was trying to find, you can see there's a picture of the arcade cabinet. That is the original arcade cabinet, and the original artwork as well that I kind of stuffed there in the corner of the screen. So yeah, I understand, you know, people do a lot of work, you know, a lot of research behind our videos. We do too, and we do try as much as possible to actively promote other channels. So anyways, many thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.